Well, this is an unusual start to one of my moth trapping videos. Normally we get a bit of a sunset before the proceedings actually begin, but everything's all askew this evening. I drove out here to Besthorpe gravel pits, and on arrival there was a car in the car park, and I didn't know what to do, so I found myself now at another part of Besthorpe Nature Reserve. I'm just inside one of the large meadows here. The car is still down in the car park. Still can't see the point of having a barrier and leaving it unlocked, but we will have to make do, and that's why we've got a late start. It's 19:30. It's a very mild night. It's about 16 centigrade at the moment, and I've still not properly got set up yet. So this is one of those sort of smash and grab trapping sessions. Certainly give it a couple of hours. I'm presuming the temperature is going to drop. Clear skies are forecast later, but we'll see what happens and what comes in. It's a good night for it anyway. Bit of a different start to this video. I'm saying no sort of pre-evening or pre-trapping sunset, straight into it almost, but we'll see what turns up. It is a good spot here. I'm up against some trees, so consequently we've already got two of these chaps, or should I say ladies. These of course are hornets, which I'm extremely fond of, but I do like to pot them up when they come to light. The reason I do that is because obviously they can be attracted to bright things, so exposed skin they can land on and hardly can get tangled in my hair, but I just like to have them potted up and be in control of the children, so to speak. So they will happily settle down in this pot and will be released at the end of tonight's session. And what we're going to get, I don't know. Maybe we could be surprised by something. Now, one thing about autumn is that there's always some lovely colour, and here's a fine example. It's not just restricted to deciduous trees at this time of year when they change the colour of the leaves. Some of the moths produce vivid examples of autumn colour, as does this pink-barred sallow. It's an extremely fresh specimen. It's a real beauty, and like a number of the other sallows that are around this time of year, are a combination of bright yellow and various shades of pink. It's a real beauty of a moth, one to look out for if you're trapping this time of year. One thing about moth trapping in autumn, you might not get so many moths, but there's often a lot of colour. Well, it's moth in a pot time, but don't get too excited, because what's in here is a very common moth indeed in the UK during the summer months. One that you can often trap in numbers, and it's a yellowtail. And the reason why it's potted up and interesting, I'm hoping to get some footage of it once it settles down, which it appears as though it has, but it's the time of year. I've never known of a partial second brood of yellowtail, and this is the second one actually that's come in. I don't know where the other one's got to, but this is a sign of the summer that we've had, of the fine weather. Normally these breed and lay their eggs, and the young larvae hatch, and then in spring, usually in sort of May and early June, you can find the larvae very easily on hawthorn. I used to love looking for the larvae. Ever since I was a kid, you could always find these because they would sit out on top of a leaf in the open. But to see a yellowtail on the 1st of October is completely new to me. Maybe in a few years' time, if there are changes to the weather and the climate, we may get a second brood. of yellowtail. Nice to see. It's almost a remnant or a reminder of the summer. In many ways, this moth is very much representative of 2025 and the hot summer that we've had. That hot summer has encouraged a number of species to produce partial second broods, and from the evidence that I saw of yellowtail here earlier in the year, it's perhaps a good job too, because I don't think yellowtail had a particularly good summer. And so if it's producing a partial second brood, hopefully numbers will be boosted next year. But I never would have thought or expected to have seen a yellowtail on the 1st of October. Well, it's a very good start. Very pleased, and the temperature is still only 14. I'm certainly going to give it a couple of hours, probably longer, see what comes in. And there are moths coming in all the time, but one of those that has come in is this here, and this is another moth that's pretty much a sign of the times, and this is a white point, a species which I've talked about a lot, and it's worth doing so because not so many years ago this would have had me jumping up and down and screaming and shouting, and it still is a good moth to get. Years ago it used to be an incredibly rare migrant. It started to occur in Nottinghamshire a few years ago, and now people are catching multiples of these. I think I've had about 9 here at some time. Most of the records are in the Trent Valley or the eastern parts of the county, but it can turn up anywhere, and it has done. So that's a nice one for tonight's list. This will probably be a 3rd brood, to be honest, because I caught one earlier in the year, and I think that was at Misson, and then we had the sort of main brood of flight season, which have caught a number this year, and what most I've ever caught. It's a species which is increasing year on year so far in Nottinghamshire, and this is a nice late one. So white point added to the list. It looks like we're going to get over 20 after all. Well, here's that white point, and you can see how the name is derived. Always been regarded as 2 species, but there's a thought from some parts of the mothing fraternity that white point is actually a European subspecies of clay. But the 2 moths are very different. The genitalia are meant to be extremely similar, but most people regard white point and clay as being 2 distinct species, and this one is particularly finely spotted. And it's also small. It's all smaller than a normal clay would be. But there's been 2 different, or 2 clearly separate periods between the broods that I've had this year. And this is just the only one that's come in so far tonight. But it settled down nicely on the old notebook. We're on 18 species so far. We've come to a bit of a halt in terms of new species coming in, but they will come in. Still not had large yellow underwing yet. Had a single lesser yellow underwing, which have made a bit of a comeback in the last week or so, or the last couple of trapping attempts that I've had. But of all the moths that are in, beaded chestnut is quite a nice one. There's a single willow beauty, which aren't really. There's a series of moths called beauties, and some are quite nicely marked and attractive, but they're basically grey with few darker markings on, and Willow Beauty, in all honesty, is quite drab. 3 brimstones in, don't know where they've gone. One's in the grass just over yonder there. Say the 2 yellowtail, a couple of cetaceous Hebrew character, and just that 1 white point. But plenty of opportunity for moths to come in. And so this is a time of year where I've never really covered much in the Trent Valley, not until I started here last year. And so there's a lot that can be caught potentially, and the night is still pleasantly warm enough. It's 14 according to the thermometer, and just the lightest of breezes at the moment. Very nice conditions. Well, that's the general vista. I've just stepped about 10 yards away from the sheet. There's very little coming in actually. This second hour has been very quiet, and we're just about to go into the 3rd hour now, so I am going to carry on, give it another hour just to see what happens. And I've not showed much of the sheet because it's mostly crane flies on the sheet. There's very little in the way of moths flying around. I think there is one flying around at the moment, but so, as I say, it's been very quiet, but it's a lovely evening. There's some light cloud cover. The temperature is still a decent temperature, and we'll see how it goes. Play it by ear, so to speak. Maybe it's time for another cuppa. I've got to dunk my ginger nuts in something. Well, I'm including a bit of footage of this moth. This is a black rustic, and it's basically just to show you that I have actually trapped one. But this light doesn't do this moth justice, so I'll put a photograph in here before this one wanders off, just to show you what an attractive moth black rustic is. Didn't think it'd hang around for very long. They never do. They never really settle, black rustics. Well, here's a moth that I don't catch every day, but if I trapped here regularly, then this species would turn up very frequently at this time of year. And it's a good sized moth, this. It's a large wainscot, and you can compare this specimen to those 3 examples shown in the identification guide, and this one is the equivalent of that one. There's not a lot you can say to it. They're a pale sort of buff colour. This one's slightly darker, and there's just that row of dots that goes across each of the forewings. But if you've not seen this species before, when it first turns up, you'll wonder what on earth it is. But it's a nice moth to get. It's certainly probably the rarest of the species that have come in this evening. We're on to about 25 species now, actually, and that's a nice one. Over the years, Dillis himself never really caught a number of large wainscots. They were just very much an occasional moth. So a nice one to get this evening. We're approaching the end of the 3rd hour already, and I've not been able to do a lot to camera because there's not been that much come in. And yet it remains a trapping session with promise. When you get those feelings in your water, so to speak, that something could just drop in, it's one of those sessions. It's very pleasant, 14 centigrade still. I thought the temperature was going to drop, but it hasn't. Started off at 16 and is now still only 14. So it's not as if it's cold or anything like that. There are a few more moths starting to turn up. There's no big numbers of anything, but 1 or 2 beaded chestnut, including one absolute stonking beaded chestnut. It's a real beauty of a thing, and is going back to have its photograph taken, and hopefully, if it's played, you've just been looking at the photograph of said beaded chestnut. But it just seems like one of those nights where something could drop in, which is something you could say about most nights, to be honest. Occasionally you get some where you know nothing's going to come in. And that's another feeling in your water that you get. It's nice temperature, it's a beautiful evening. And there are a few moths. So do we go into a 4th hour? If you're not looking at the back end of the car in the next clip, you'll know that we're into the 4th hour. Oh, we've had another sallow just drop in, and to be honest, this is the most unmarked sallow that I've ever seen. But it's beautiful. Normally there are a variety of purplish marks anywhere on the forewings here, but this one is incredibly plain. Just those 2 dark circular marks on the wing there, but a very beautiful moth. I will take this home to photograph it, because I don't think I've ever seen or photographed one like this. But it's a beautiful moth. It's another one of those sallows which are absolutely stunning moths. And so a nice one. That's 3 now that's come in, and the first one that's hung around. Well, it's 2300 hours, and I'm thinking of packing up now. Nothing else has really come in since 10:30, and so I might as well just have a steady pack up. It's been a very enjoyable session, lovely conditions which really tempt me to stay a bit longer, but you can stay and stay and stay and just get a few more moths. So I think it's time to pack up. But I've enjoyed it. I enjoyed it here. Time to go.